And thank you for the opportunity to come to Brazil for the very first time for me. It's fantastic. Thank you. And so, yeah, I will, now that we've got the technology working. So, I intend to give you a brief outline of Historic Scotland and what we do there, talk about our engine shed project, and then talk about some of the issues that we face in Scotland with regard to climate change and how that impacts in disaster recovery issues there, and then go on to talk about the Glasgow School of Art. So we are the lead public body in Scotland for the historic environment, and some statistics. We have 1,200 employees. We have 336 properties in our own care that we look after throughout Scotland. That pales into insignificance with the National Museum's collection. We have 40,000 objects in our collections, but we also have 5 million manuscripts and architectural drawings and photography. In Scotland we have 8,200 scheduled monuments, which are monuments really of stone ruins, basically roofless properties, castles and things. But we also have 47,000 listed buildings of significance. We also are the largest skills trainer in Scotland when it comes to things like stonemasonry and craft skills, which we're very, very proud of. And we also have a grant scheme for heritage properties of £14.5 million a year, which we give out to local authorities, private owners, to maintain and look after their properties. So we have iconic sites that I have the privilege of looking after, things like Edinburgh Castle, but also the picturesque Inverlochy Castle up in the north, right up to the islands where we've got the standing stones that are in our care. A whole range of wonderful sites. We've just completed this project, which is our National Conservation Centre. £11 million worth of funding. A lot of that came from our national lottery. Our National Heritage Lottery Fund contributed a great deal to the project. And we took, you can see that we're taking an old engine shed, which was an old redundant building, and we've added 2 wings to the side of it to make this building come alive again, and tell us the story of Scotland and its traditional materials. And we talk, the stars of this gallery are the traditional materials of Scotland, but also there we do our training, we do our research, we've got our science team there, our digital team there are based there, and climate change, industrial heritage, all of that goes on within this building. And it's free for all to come and look at and to come in and play. The kids love this. We've got this amazing area, we've got this huge map of Scotland. We've got our 100-seater theatre for conferences, which can be extended to a 200-seater conference, and we hold all our conferences in the engine shed. So again, we're trying to practice what we preach. This building is eminently sustainable. We've got borehole heating, we've used clay plasters, clay renders, sheep's wool insulation, wood boarding, recycled materials as well, again, just to practice what we preach. When it comes to climate change, we have a mandate from our government to tackle climate change in heritage buildings. The issues that we face in Scotland are a bit different from Brazil. You can see the sort of issues that we've got. 27 fewer days of frost, a 1 degree rise in temperature, less snow, more rain. Yeah, there's a lot of rain in Scotland. That's why it's so green. But sea level rise and additional growing periods as well, which obviously impact on our traditional buildings. And I arrived here late on Sunday night, on Monday. We've just had our longest day in Scotland, and I was surprised to hear that it's winter here. This was Monday in Scotland. We had flash floods in Edinburgh and Glasgow. So climate change and the impact of water on these buildings is quite significant. in the bigger picture is Duff House, which is a Robert Adam, a very important house in its own right, which we have in our care. But it's a subsidiary of the National Galleries of Scotland. So within this house is a huge collection of very, very important paintings and artefacts. And so we have done a risk assessment of every one of our properties throughout Scotland, looking at the risk assessment for flooding. Our risk assessment showed that the house wouldn't actually flood. It's nice to see that it actually didn't flood. So that's great. But also, you know, natural hazards. We have lightning strikes. This is a church in Scotland that was struck by lightning. And again, we talk about insurances and what we need to cover our properties. Just to give you some idea of the implications of this strike. And obviously, you'll get an idea of cost as well. When you look at the extent of scaffold that had to go up to actually carry out the repairs to the church. Other issues that we face, and someone talked about this yesterday, is we are facing forest fires as well in Scotland. Believe it or not, with all that rain, we still have issues of forest fires. We do have very dry periods at time. And this puts a huge strain on our fire services as well. You can imagine if they're out tackling these sort of blazes, they're not in when we've got a heritage fire somewhere in Scotland. Moving on to the main subject, which is Glasgow School of Art. We have been partners with the Glasgow School of Art for some time now in our digital technology, laser scanning, and the development of our laser scanning techniques. We are quite proud of where we are with laser scanning. We've been at the cutting edge for quite some time, and we had an amazing project where we scanned our then five World Heritage Sites in Scotland. We've now got 6 World Heritage Sites in Scotland with the inclusion of the Forth Rail Bridge. But for every site that we did in Scotland, we did an international site. So I've stood on Washington's Head at Mount Rushmore. I've stood on top of Sydney Opera House when we went out to scan Sydney Opera House. We went to Runiki Vav, the stepwell in India, and then out to Qing Dynasty tombs in China, and finished off actually scanning a crane that was built in Glasgow in Japan for the World Heritage Site around Nagasaki. So yeah, we've got an international reputation for that, and we've developed that with the Glasgow School of Art. But going back to the Macintosh, this is one of Macintosh's masterpieces. It was all of his own work, a fantastic piece of work. And it's amazing. The School of Art is something that attracts a lot of art students simply because of the building. So it was very significant. And on that fateful day in 2014, the students were all in the college. It was final degree show time. They had their friends, they had their mums and dads, they had lots of people, lots of strange people were in the building. And one of the students, just to show you, this is a precious Macintosh door that these things are pinned to. And this isn't the first time they've been pinned to them, you can see. But it was a working art school, so there was the art materials, you can imagine, turpentine, all sorts of solvents and everything around the building. This was it. It's a working art school. So the installation was going on. One of the students' installation was one of these digital projectors, which he decided he would cover in foam from an aerosol. And the result of that was this devastation. So by 1 p.m. on Friday, this is the situation. And of course, as we've seen, the press pick up on, and it's the death of the school. But it was that we were then contacted by the school and asked if we could help. And we were also approached by the minister, our Minister of Culture, to say, go and help, see what you can do. So just to orientate you, the fire was mainly at this end of the building. we very quickly had a demolition contractor on site, Rygards, who were actually superb and really helped us with this project. So they got this shipped over, and I was up in the basket, so that's how I got the photograph. And you can see that the main fire was contained to this end of the west end of the building. It was stopped at this point, and you can see why it was stopped at this point. Although there were 3 phases, there were really 2 main phases of the Glasgow School of Art, and this was phase 1. So you had this fireproof barrier, which actually kept the fire contained within this end of the building, and there was really only smoke damage at that end of the building. So looking at this is the section. At this time, we didn't actually have any drawings. I've added these drawings later on, but you can see this is where the fire started. There's the lecture hall on this level, which was really untouched and only damaged by the water damage of all the water pouring down on it. Above, you've got the gallery, a studio, and then you've got the main library, which is this section here, and the furniture store above, which was hung off the structure of the floor above, and then a studio above that. Concrete floors, we're just looking at the fire today, concrete floors which held in place and didn't actually give way, but did mean that the flames from the fire were directed out of the building. And the other tragic thing about this was that there was conservation work on. We had grant-aided a scheme of conservation. They were working to a program, as maybe most universities try and do, is work for that window of opportunity in the summer when the students are away. So they use that period to do the work. So that's the extent of work that they can do and program in. They had programmed in and were virtually there with a sprinkler system. In fact, they were 4 weeks away from a full sprinkler system being in this building when they hit asbestos, and that stopped the work until they got that out. And then the fire occurred. So the sprinkler system was 98% in when this fire started. But I'm not sure that the sprinkler system would have actually helped here, because the main issue, this was one of the earliest buildings to have air conditioning, and that air conditioning meant that there was ducts behind timber lining running the full height of the building. So they acted as a chimney and took the flames right up through the building. By Saturday morning at 7 a.m, the fire had started on the Friday. We were on site trying to offer assistance as best we could. The fire was still going. The fire services were doing an amazing job of trying to get this fire out. They were there within 10 minutes of the fire, so they were there superbly quickly, and they took an amazing action and actually went in and fought this fire, which was a real bravery for them to go in and do this. So this is what they call the hen run. In Scotland, a hen is a woman. So this was where the tapestry studios were, which was mainly a women's, not sexist, but in Victorian times. So this was the hen run after the fire. And as we've seen, lots of smoke damage, beautiful Macintosh door, the plaster casts that the students use for their artwork, complete destruction throughout the building. And this is the library, as we knew it, the famous Macintosh library. And sadly, this was it when we went in. And you can see that there was a balcony level, but the balcony had collapsed in the fire. It actually collapsed on the books, so some of the books were, well, you could see that clearly some of the books were okay. A lot of books lost. An amazing collection within the library, and the fire is still going at this time. So we're getting access through the fire officer who's allowing us into this building, and with his support, and he's with us all the time. We then use the adjoining buildings to assess what was happening here. This is the Reed building. Again, this is not a criticism, but they've just spent £20 million building this nice new shiny building, which you could have argued maybe they should have. Oh, never mind. Anyway, so in hindsight, we can learn lots of things. The collateral damage here was not that great, although the drains were choked and the actual Reed building was flooded, and the basement was flooded. We went into the Reed building and we found these people wading about in the basement, and the electricity was still on and everything was still on. We said, well, you have to come out of there. It's it's quite a dangerous situation. So again, they were distressed as well. So we were kind of independent, and we could take over and look at this quite seriously. So we got formal approval. We got a formal letter from the director saying, please, of the art school, please assist us with this project. We then took over responsibility for these issues. So the structural stability of the building, working with the fire services and the police. This was still a police investigation, a crime scene until proved otherwise. So there was a cordon around the building for the police, looking at health and safety and salvage, looking at what the potential risks for the building might be, working with building control, and lead the salvage operation and the documentation of the building, and supporting others with the salvage of the collection, which was in the basement of the building. And just like as we saw this morning, the librarian, we didn't have plans at that time, the librarian sketched out the library and told us where the periodicals were, which are not so significant, but where the rare books were, where they were in the library, and what to look out for in the library. They were totally devastated by this fire, as you can imagine. I'm sure that the staff of the museum were, and we saw that just before I spoke, how devastated they were. We could bring all our technology and all our science teams, so thermography, the fire brigade obviously had thermography as well. We can do it, we have slightly more sophisticated, but you can see how hot this building was. We could also bring in our specialist photographers. Our laser scanning team were already, this is Saturday afternoon, we're already scanning the building and analysing the structure. I'm looking at it from an architectural point of view. And we did have, the school did actually scan the building in 2008 and 2010, but they didn't have enough money to scan the whole building. So they just did what the exteriors and some of the elevations. Fortunately, they'd scanned this with the library elevation. And from our scans on the Saturday and looking at it on the Sunday, we were then able to overlay the previous scans on top of the scans that we took on the Saturday and look for any movement, because building control were suggesting that this whole gable should be demolished for public safety. And their primary concern is public safety, so that's fair enough. That's their primary concern. We had to reassure them, and we had to demonstrate to them that public safety is still there, and the movement is not significant. And we were able to do that with our overlaying of the scans. We continued on to scan the main fire area, and in larger detail you can start to see the statues are all still in place. You can see the extent of debris in the library and around the building as well. So the scans were really useful for us. Moving on into the room above the Macintosh library, which is the furniture store. This had Macintosh furniture in it, very, very special furniture. Their boardroom, they were anxious about the furniture in the boardroom, the original Macintosh table and the Macintosh seats, and they got replicas made for the boardroom. The originals were in here, so sadly they were all lost. But you can see the holes in the floor is very dangerous. We spoke to the fire services, and the fire services agreed that they will do a salvage plan. Normally, they might just knock this floor down and let everything drop onto the library floor below, but they agreed to do a salvage plan, work with us on a salvage of what was in there. So they set up a safety line across to the building where we'd been looking in, and allowed that for safety. And we then slowly but surely cleared out the building. Again, this was with lots of support from our staff, and this was not white gloves conservation. This was the rubber gloves to try and get this material out as safely and as complete as possible. So we had a triage area within the building, pieces of remnants of Macintosh furniture. Our curators helped us. Again, one thing that we did pick up, we didn't have name tags on people, so we didn't know who they were. We knew who all our staff were. They were all badged up, but we didn't know specifically what the skills of these people were, so we had to do that on a sort of ad hoc basis. We found this material to be okay as a temporary material, but to use it in any sort of archive, the consequences of this in a fire, it just sticks to the paintings. It's a nightmare. So I would avoid that. And with the professionals, great advice to take plenty of breaks. We cleared all the materials down, and we then had to find a place to store all this stuff that we're taking out of the building. We didn't assess it in any way, we just cleared it out of the building. And very quickly, we got support from the local authority. The McLennan Gallery was just down the road, so we had this trail of people taking this, and it was empty at the moment. But what the police said was, look, we can't stop someone going right into the centre of Glasgow and selling off this stuff. So you're going to have to police this and make sure that you guys are not going away with the material, which of course they weren't, but yeah. So we brought a huge resource, our own resource to this, and to help with the team. And at the peak we had 60 of our own staff on site working through all of this that was going on. We very quickly worked with our demolition contractor we established this gable had to come down, the top end of it, only the triangle. We had it scanned, we had it numbered. Our stonemasons numbered each stone and carefully took down every single stone. Small things, we realized PPE is so important. Strong team spirit was really important. Clarity of purpose, again, from our team was very, very clear. I'll not go through all of these because I don't have time to go through. But our initial thoughts for our own sites, it demonstrated to us that our on-call was not fit for purpose. Identification of staff was not clear. Site communication was hopeless. And then the expectations of ministers, again, as you know, it's a bit of a double-edged sword. Ministers coming on site and saying, yeah, we'll give you 10 million. And we want it complete and restored in 3 years' time. So also ambulance chasers, the media door-stopping was another. We had to be very careful. Of course, social media now was a big issue as well, trying to keep our staff clear of that. So that was a celebration. The fire was out, fire brigade left. The students clapped the fire brigade as they left the site. And work started. And then we put this temporary roof over again, as with the museum. We wanted an envelope that could give us enough space underneath to actually do all the conservation work that we needed to allow materials to be brought into site. So that, again, we worked on that. I'm going to skip this because I don't have time. We used the scan to then, for the archaeological clearance of the library, we could work out the volume of materials and give a brief to the archaeologists to start clearing out the debris. The insurance companies, we had two separate insurance companies. One was for the building and the other was for the content. So they can play each other off, so to be careful about that one as well. And of course, one insurer said, well, it's all content because it's a library. And we were saying, no, there's light fittings and there's important things in here that we've got to get out. And as we did, we found some of the light fittings, and you'll see So again, we were able to use XRF to assist with the conservation work of looking after the plaster casts, the light fittings themselves. We were able to analyse and give some information on them so that they could be restored safely. So when it comes to things like insurance, this is in 1730, a pound would buy you £1,000 worth of insurance. Single-page document, not the 20-odd page document we were talking about yesterday. Quite clear, this is for a very important house in Scotland. But the conservation work was going on. It gave us an opportunity to maybe take out some of the later modifications to the building. So, for example, in the hen run, reinstate the original Macintosh rather than this later 60s insertion. So that was great. We were all very, very pleased, and that was it. Now, just very quickly to move on from here. These were all the people that were involved with us and greatly supported us. The fire brigade, of course, did an amazing job. So the project was going well until and you can see, so this was heartbreaking for all of us involved in this project. And so this is the library end here. The fire has gone through the whole building and devastated it. Press. And of course, I thought someone was kidding, telling me, you know, it was a joke, or meant to be a joke, but that's just awful. So, very, very quickly, the affected areas, all of the people living in these houses had to be evacuated. The rebuilding was shut down. All these commercial premises were closed down for 2 months, 2.5 months. And then they were allowed back in their houses once you got it cleared. You could imagine if you had a loaf of bread on your table and you come back 2 months later. So it was pretty awful. We had to do a lot of work working with the community. The fire also devastated the O2 building next door. So there was a fair bit of collateral damage. But we had to then, through the engineers who did a great job on this, this is how far we believed we had to take down the building, potentially to the red line. In most cases, we've gone as far as the green line to down take this building. So, you know, there's the view of the hen run. There's the hen run as it stands today. The rebuilding across the way, the whole facade is lost and has to be replaced. And it's an incredibly sophisticated and expensive system which takes 6 months to procure. We have 600 tons of scaffold to support these elevations, which there's still the inquiry is still going on as to how the fire started. Just to stand still, it's costing £120,000 a month just to stand still. The insurance, obviously, insurance are waiting to find out what the cause of the fire was. We still don't know. And you can see this was after the first fire, the library elevation. You can see how much damage there is after the second fire. We had just done all the stone replacement and all the conservation on this, and it's completely out. This was the Macintosh room. This famous, wonderful Macintosh fireplace now looks like this. Just to end, finally, this is our guidance note, still current. You can download this for free. Fire safety management in traditional buildings. It's a 2-volume set, so thus I didn't bring any with me, but you can download it from our website. I've also got a few hard copies of digital documentation. If anybody's really interested in digital documentation, I've got a couple of copies here, but it can also be downloaded from our website. Thank you.